What's a sign of childhood trauma? In some cases, excessive people-pleasing tendencies. Hyper-independence. Can't be let down if you never ask for anything in the first place. Difficulties trusting, low self-esteem, fears of being judged. I am always scared that people are mad at me. Always. Unable to forgive themselves for small mistakes. Trouble forming relationships. Completely shutting down when criticized or corrected. Took me years to get past this. Edit. Oh. K. Was not expecting this level of response. Hell, I didn't even know this was a diagnosis with a name. Rejection-sensitive dysphoria. In an attempt to answer questions, I'll explain as succinctly as possible. TL. Dr at the bottom. Backstory. My parents are boomers. Dad grew up in a coal mining town in southern Illinois, was a Vietnam Marine turned missionary in Uganda in the late 70s. Interesting times is his description. Mom grew up in Savannah, GA and survived the civil rights and integration riots of the Deep South. Became a missionary to South America also in the late 70s. Viva la Revolution. So, suffice it to say they've lived through some shit and are orders of magnitude harder fucks than I'll ever be. They didn't have the tools we do today to diagnose and cope. So they internalized all of it instead, on top of a ton of old-fashioned generational blue-collar trauma. As is tradition, it was passed on to me. How I recognized and started treating it. Bootcamp got the ball rolling. It keeps you at a functional high level of stress, to the point you just have to deal with it. There's no time to shut down or feel sorry for yourself. You showed up behind schedule and don't realize you've caught up until you get to your first unit and oversleep for the first time on your day off. I lucked up and my then-girlfriend spotted it. She stopped letting me retreat to my dark place. I eventually married her. Even then it was years before we realized how broken I was. I found mentors in different areas of interest. Some were authors or had podcasts. The main one was a gunsmith and had a PhD of history who took me in when my parents split. He gave solid advice which I took to heart. PT. The hardest part is working out and building discipline. Sometimes I have to be at muscle failure before I can think straight. Research. I've been reading up on stress, trauma, PTSD, recovery, historical warrior cultures, meditation. All of it. Been attacking this like an engineer or mechanic instead of a doctor. Lastly, most importantly, I got help from other people. I could not do this alone. It was just too much to process. TL. Dr. Bootcamp. No time for self-recrimination, too much shit to do. Found a friend willing and able to help. Found mentors, in person and in books, podcasts. Physical training. It sucks but works. Researched the topic across multiple disciplines and cultures. Strangely, I never found the RSD diagnosis. I got help. I found people to help me. Oversharing when you haven't known the person long, or the opposite where you don't open up to anybody. Two extremes. Hypervigilance. Getting disproportionately frustrated at themselves for small accidents such as spilling things, accidentally breaking something, etc. What happens is, a lot of these people would be abused as a kid for these things, so as an adult when it happens, their brain overloads their system with fear and anxiety, and frustration can be secondary emotion to that. So when these things happens, this is basically a conditioned response because your brain associates these accidents with imminent danger. This is why therapy is so important for people who had shit childhoods, especially during their developing years. I had no idea this was a thing until I went to therapy, but when my therapist explained this to me, it made so much sense. And now when these things happen, I tend to laugh it off. Scared of conflict to the point you avoid it at all costs, certain that if it happens the other person will hate you, it will end awfully. You've never seen people calmly sit down and discuss their emotions in a loving way, so that world doesn't exist. Having a hard time showing emotion. Edit. Wow. Many people are replying to this. Sorry in advance if I don't get around to reply to you specifically. Some of you have also mentioned the other extreme of this, a lot of emotion, outbursts of emotion. Regardless, I hope everybody is doing better. Less than 3 Edit 2. Thanks for the awards. Inability to form and keep relationships, having sparse or little to no memory of your childhood, eating disorders, depression, social anxiety, agoraphobia, extreme emotional shifts, attachment issues, consistent exhaustion, strong unexplainable reactions towards social stimuli, separation anxiety, gastrointestinal issues and complications, substance abuse and addiction, intrusive thoughts, self-destructive behavior, etc. Constantly apologizing for every little thing. Extreme introversion. Little to no outward emotion. Ability to stay calm in emergencies or chaotic situations. Choosing partners who don't support, cherish or value you. Choosing jobs and relationships that reflect the lack of empathy and neglect that you grew up with. Feeling bad just for existing. Edit. Tism for the award, and I'm sorry to everyone that relates to this comment. I promise you have nothing to be sorry for.